The Elevation Advisor Catalog feature allows you to easily organize the materials, equipment, and subcontractors you use in your business and proposals. This is also where you can add your install times for your materials. Now, you could build your catalog out in the software, however, it would take way too much time. So we've made it easy for you to do with a spreadsheet. We've even supplied a simple version of the catalog used by my company, Legacy Landscapes, and it also includes our install times as a reference. Now, our install times are based off of a two-man crew and are not intended to be used in your company. They are for reference only and should always be checked against your own crew's production times. To download the spreadsheet, click on the Import Materials list icon. At the bottom of the sidebar, click on the Download CSV template. You can choose to open the file from here, work on it, and save it later, or we recommend saving it right now to your computer, then open it from that location to start working on it. So now that it's open, you can see that all of the columns are minimized down to the same size. Let's make all of them bigger so they are easier to read and work with. First, you need to highlight all of the columns by clicking on A, holding the mouse button down and dragging over to K. Then double-click on the line in between any two columns. Let's zoom in so it's easier to see, and then we can go over the information on the spreadsheet. You will notice in column A, the header says SKU or SKU, and all of the cells are blank. You need to make sure not to delete this column and that you leave all the cells blank, because when you upload the spreadsheet back into the software, it uses that column to automatically create a unique identifier SKU number for each one of the items that you add. Column B is the name of the item you want to add. Make sure the name you choose is something you will remember so you can look it up in a quick search later on. The description column is optional. You might want to use this if you have multiple people bidding on projects. It simply explains what that item is used for in your product's catalog. Category, subcategory, and group are ways of organizing your product list to make it easier to find them when you're building proposals. Picture these as different departments within a hardware store. For instance, when you walk into a hardware store, you can see a paint section, which would represent the categories in our spreadsheet. Inside the paint section, there's aisles that contain like items. One of the aisles has painting accessories, which would be the subcategories in our spreadsheet. In the accessory aisle, you will find paintbrushes, another section with tape, and yet another section with tarps. Those would represent the groups in our spreadsheet. Every item needs to be associated with a category, but the subcategory and groups are optional and are typically only used when you have a lot of items in a single category. You can add new categories if you want, but we've spent a lot of time organizing this and found that we have come up with what makes the most sense, especially when you're running a landscaping business that requires a larger list of materials. Now let's go over the categories and we will explain the methodologies we employed to organize the materials into these particular categories. The first one is building materials. It's anything you would typically find at a hardware store, minus the irrigation and wood products. Bulk materials are any materials that would typically be delivered to your job site in a dump truck. The disposal section is intended to be used for anything that has to do with disposal on a job site, such as truck time for haul-off, disposal fees, or even garbage containers that you have delivered to your jobs. Hardscapes is anything you would pick up at a hardscapes yard, such as boulders, pavers, flagstone, paver sand, or paver edging. Now, I think it's important to note here that not everybody is going to put the same items in the same categories. For instance, in my company, even though we use diamond blades to cut pavers, I don't put them in the hardscape category because we buy our diamond blades from the hardware store. As a result, I've categorized our diamond blades in the building materials under the subcategory of concrete and masonry. You might want to put them in the hardscape section. Either way, there is no right or wrong. You just need to organize your material list in the way that works best for your brain so you can find them easily when you're creating your proposals. Irrigation and plumbing is probably going to be your biggest section and is used for irrigation, water feature plumbing, and stormwater drainage. We suggest you start with the minimum amount of materials you need and grow your list in the software as you go. We will show you how to do this later on in the proposal sections. The labor section is used for any labor on a job site that's not associated with the material. For instance, irrigation trenching only uses labor and doesn't require any material. The landscape category is for materials that have to do with softscaping, such as sod, different edgings, weed fabric, and geotextiles. Nursery is where you will put all of your plants and trees. Outdoor lighting will include any products that has to do with low voltage outdoor lighting that you install. The travel category can be used for companies that work out of town for things like hotel and per diem. In this case, we're showing mileage, which can be used for companies that have their employees drive to the job sites in their own vehicles. Wood products is used for any wood materials that you will use to build decks, pergolas, pavilions, and framing. And that is it for our category list. As I said earlier, you can change the category names. You can start your whole list fresh. Just know that it's important to keep the format of the spreadsheet the same, meaning column B is the name of your item, C is the description of the item, D is for category, E subcategory, F group. As long as you keep the format the same, you can change the names to whatever you want. Now, let's move on to column G, which is unit. This is simply the unit of measurement used to bid your materials. Some of the materials you supply, like bark or mulch, might come in two different measurements. You might sell bark or mulch by the yard and by the bag, depending on the situation. If you sell them both ways, you will need to add them twice. In this example, the first one is named bark with the unit in yards, and the other named bark bag with the unit as each. The reason for this is because your price and labor time will be different for each item. The price is what you pay per unit of measurement for the materials that you supply to your customers. The next two columns are install time and install unit. This is where you will record how long it takes a crew, not an individual, to install your materials. It's important to note that the install time is always in minutes, and the install unit is the quantity of the unit of measurement you're basing your install time off of. Now, that might sound confusing, so I will explain it using bark as an example. We bid bark in our company by the yard, and I know that it takes a crew of 20 minutes to install and spread 1 yard of bark. So you can see our unit of measurement is in yards, our install time is 20 minutes, and our install unit is 1, because it takes 20 minutes for every 1 yard of bark we install. In the bagged bark, you will see that the install unit is 2, and the install time is 1 minute. This means that it takes 1 minute to install 2 bags. I don't like to work in decimals, so it's always easier to add more to the install unit so you can keep your minutes whole. Another example of this would be installing pavers. It wouldn't make much sense to try to figure out how long it takes to install 1 square foot of pavers because it would be a decimal point. So when it comes to pavers, I like to think in terms of 100 square feet because there's usually around 100 square feet to a pallet of pavers. In this case, it takes a crew of 80 minutes to install 100 square feet of pavers. Now, if you don't know your install times, don't worry. Most companies don't. The software can easily help you calculate it in the proposal section. So again, if you're not sure what your install times are, leave them blank and we will show you how to do it later. Last column is vendor. This is where you will add any vendor you order each material from. If you order a particular material from more than one vendor, add them all. For instance, we order our hardscapes from a vendor called Gibson's Nursery, but in a pinch we will order from Site 1. So we'll add them both. When you add more than one vendor, be sure to separate them with a comma. It doesn't matter if you have a space between, but you do need the comma. Now, the last thing I want to explain about the vendor column is that it's optional. You don't have to fill it out, but we recommend you do because it will give you better reporting when you order materials from the project budgets page. Go ahead and finish adding all the materials you use for your landscaping business. Double check and triple check the items and the pricing. Don't worry if you forget something, we can always add it later on in the software. Right now, we just want you to get the bulk of your materials because, as I stated earlier, this is the easiest and quickest way to do it. Once you're done, save your work and then go back to the software. Now that you're back in the software, click on the Import Materials list. Then click on Select a CSV file to upload. Now, you can drag and drop the file, or you can click on the file and then click Open. Once you see your file show up, click the Save button, and you will see your list of materials here. When you're ready, go to the side menu, click on subcontractors, and we'll add those next.